Earthling, you probably think the dot-com bubble burst because investors were too excited about the internet. That's the comforting version humans like to repeat. The idea that you simply got a little carried away with websites that had no revenue and CEOs who had no business plans. But here's what still puzzles my extraterrestrial logic. In the late 1990s, your species managed to convince itself that a company with no revenue, no product, and sometimes a business plan scribbled on a napkin was worth billions of your currency. And the only requirement? It had to have a .com at the end of its name. Apparently, adding those 6 characters instantly transformed any idea into a market-shattering innovation. But tell me something. If excitement alone destroys trillions of dollars, why did you keep pouring money into companies that didn't even have a product yet? At this point, my superior extraterrestrial logic begins to malfunction, because from where I'm standing, this is the economic equivalent of celebrating the construction of a building by buying shares in the empty plot of land next to it. You see, the real cause wasn't just hype. The data points to something far stranger. A perfect storm of cheap money, irrational valuation models, and a technological gold rush that convinced humans that profits were optional. And today, we're opening the field report on how the most revolutionary invention of your century, the internet, turned into a financial explosion so bright it blinded everyone watching. This story begins in the early 1990s. Earthling, the moment I first landed in what you humans proudly called the information age. And trust me, stepping onto your planet during that era felt like walking into a laboratory where every scientist had simultaneously yelled,
"Let's see what happens if we plug everything into a computer."
The world was buzzing. Computers were becoming affordable. The internet was expanding beyond universities. And suddenly, every human with a keyboard believed they were a digital pioneer. I remember standing in a cramped office in Silicon Valley, watching engineers celebrate because they had managed to make a web page load 3 seconds faster. They cheered like they had cured a disease. And that was the environment. Raw technological optimism, humming servers, and a sense that anyone with a domain name could change the world. But something else was quietly fueling this atmosphere. Interest rates had been cut in the mid-90s, and money flowed through your economy like an open faucet. Venture capital firms, flush with cash, began hunting for startups the same way my species hunts for cosmic anomalies, aggressively and with zero hesitation. That's when the real catalyst appeared. Investors started rewarding growth over actual revenue. I watched founders pitch ideas with nothing but a logo, a dream, and maybe a half-functional prototype. And astonishingly, humans treated these ideas like guaranteed gold. You should have seen the meetings. One founder would say,
"We don't have customers yet."
And investors would respond,
"Perfect. That means unlimited potential."
Meanwhile, the red flags were everywhere. Companies were spending millions on marketing before they even had a product. IPOs were being launched for businesses that had never turned a profit. Some websites couldn't even stay online for more than 5 minutes without crashing. At one point, I paused and made a mental note for this report. My scans detected an imbalance. Humans were valuing possibility more than reality. Apparently, gravity doesn't apply to your financial expectations. But inside the timeline, as the bubble grew, I kept observing the same phenomenon. Everyone believed they were witnessing the birth of a new world, and nobody wanted to be the one who arrived late. It was the dream of unlimited digital expansion. And I was right there inside it, watching the foundation being built faster than anyone bothered to check if it was stable. I quickly realized something unsettling. Humans had created a new kind of financial ecosystem, one where traditional logic was optional. It all started with a simple shift in thinking. Instead of asking, "Is this company profitable?" investors asked, "Could this company dominate the future internet?" And that one change rewired the entire marketplace. The key concept that fueled the insanity was the idea of eyeballs. Yes, Earthling. Investors began valuing companies based on how many people merely looked at their websites, even if those visitors didn't buy anything, didn't subscribe to anything, and sometimes couldn't even tell what the company actually did. I remember standing inside one office where analysts proudly said,
"We're losing money on every customer, but we'll make it up in volume."
I'm not sure how your species survived long enough to invent the internet with math like that. To make sense of this system, I tried translating it into extraterrestrial logic. "So let me confirm," I said, turning to a group of humans during a product demo. "You are measuring success by counting how many organisms pass by your digital storefront, even if none of them enter, interact, or return. That's like me declaring a mission successful because 5 asteroids flew near my spaceship." One engineer just nodded enthusiastically.
Exactly, it's about potential.
During this period, I watched as companies adopted burn rates, the speed at which they spent money, that defied every survival instinct in the universe. Venture capitalists encouraged it too. Grow fast, they said. Monetize later, they repeated. But my favorite moment, and perhaps the best illustration of the mindset, came during a quick dialogue I overheard between two founders.
We don't have a business model.
Yet.
We don't have revenue.
Yet.
We're spending $5 million a month.
Exactly. That means we're scaling.
At that point, even my translator device short-circuited. Meanwhile, Wall Street analysts began using a new valuation logic that abandoned traditional metrics entirely. Instead of PE ratios, they talked about internet reach, mindshare, and future network dominance. None of these were quantifiable in a meaningful way, but they looked impressive in pitch decks, and one company after another rushed to IPO. Between 1995 and 2000, hundreds of internet startups went public, many with no profits and others with no revenue at all. Investors didn't care. Stocks often doubled or tripled on the first day. Inside that frenzy, I felt like I was drifting through a gravitational field with no center. The market wasn't reacting to performance, it was reacting to dreams, and dreams scale infinitely faster than reality. By late 1999, the mechanism was simple. Capital flowed in, companies spent aggressively, valuations skyrocketed. More investors felt they were missing out, even more capital poured in. It was a self-feeding loop, accelerating without control, and everyone mistook the acceleration for progress. I was still inside Silicon Valley when the first ripple hit. It was March 2000, and I remember standing in a crowded office where everyone stared at the NASDAQ ticker like it was a life support machine. The index had climbed for years without rest, doubling in 1999 alone, and humans convinced themselves that the rise was permanent. Then, one afternoon, the screen flickered red. Not a big drop, just enough to make the room fall silent. The trigger wasn't dramatic. It never is. A series of disappointing earnings reports, a few analysts finally questioning valuations, and suddenly the spell broke. Investors began to realize that many of these companies had no real path to profit. The selling began, and once it started, it was like gravity had suddenly returned to a market that had been floating for far too long. The domino effect was immediate. One company missed projections, its stock fell, investors panicked. They sold other tech stocks just in case. Those crashed too. More panic, more selling. I watched CEOs pace hallways at 3 a.m., trying to reassure employees while their share price evaporated outside the door. Some companies lost half their value in a single day. Others dropped so fast that by the time you finished reading the news alert, the market had already moved on. But the human impact was what hit hardest. I walked through offices where employees had once celebrated every uptick. Now they were packing boxes, stunned because their startup, the one they believed would change the world, had run out of cash overnight. Many had been paid partially in stock options that were now worthless. I remember one engineer telling me, voice shaking,
"I thought I was going to retire early. Now I can't even pay rent."
Servers were shut down. Startups closed their doors. Billions of dollars disappeared as if swallowed by a black hole. By the time the NASDAQ finished crashing, down nearly 80% from its peak, the once unstoppable digital frontier looked like a field of abandoned spacecraft, each one representing a dream that had launched too fast, burned too hot, and fallen back to Earth. And I was there for every second of the collapse, watching it unfold from the inside. When the dust finally settled, Earthling, the question echoed across every financial newsroom and every congressional hearing. Who caused this? I was still on the ground, walking through the ruins of Silicon Valley's once hyperactive ecosystem when the blame game began. First in line were the companies themselves, the infamous startups that had promised the future but couldn't produce profits in the present. Dozens of them collapsed almost instantly. Pets.com, Webvan, eToys, Boo.com, each one a symbol of how far optimism can outrun reality. But to understand responsibility, I had to look deeper. And so, like any good extraterrestrial analyst, I traced the coordinates back to three major culprits. 1. Venture capital firms. Inside private boardrooms, I watched as venture capitalists pushed founders to scale at impossible speeds. Spend more, grow faster, beat the competition. Revenue will come later. They weren't building companies. They were building race cars without brakes. Many VCs admitted privately that they knew some startups had no real business model. But as long as the IPO window remained wide open, they could exit early and pocket the gains. 2. Wall Street analysts. Then there were the analysts, the humans responsible for interpreting data. Instead of warning investors, many of them fueled the fire. I attended one meeting where an analyst literally said,
"Profits don't matter in the new digital economy.
The universe shivered when he said that. These analysts kept issuing buy ratings for companies that were losing money faster than they raised it. And when retail investors saw those ratings, they followed blindly. 3. The Federal Reserve and monetary environment. Even I, as an extraterrestrial observer, couldn't ignore the broader system. Throughout the 1990s, interest rates were low and liquidity was abundant. Money was cheap, credit was easy, and speculative appetite grew like wildfire. It didn't cause the bubble alone, but it created the perfect environment for one to grow. And here comes the plot twist, the part humans rarely talk about. The collapse didn't kill the internet, it cleansed it. Many companies vanished, yes. But the infrastructure they built, the talent they cultivated, and the technologies they pushed forward laid the groundwork for the giants that would rise next. Google, Amazon, eBay, these companies survived the crash and became stronger because of it. In other words, the dot-com bubble wasn't just a story of financial failure, it was the messy evolutionary process that shaped the modern digital world. From my perspective, it was less a catastrophe and more a cosmic filter, clearing out everything that wasn't built to survive. Looking back at the dot-com era from within the timeline, Earthling, it becomes clear that this wasn't merely a financial disaster. It was a demonstration of your species' most persistent software bug, the tendency to assume that rapid progress means guaranteed success. From my extraterrestrial perspective, the bubble didn't burst because humans lacked intelligence. Far from it, the technologies being built were remarkable. The problem was that the excitement around the internet grew faster than the internet itself could mature. You were upgrading expectations at a speed your infrastructure simply couldn't support. But here's the real takeaway. The dot-com bubble revealed how humans react when confronted with a radical new technology. You didn't treat the internet as a tool, you treated it as destiny. And that mindset created a feedback loop where potential overshadowed practicality and projections overpowered proof. What fascinates me most is that this pattern didn't stay in the past. Even today, as I continue my field research, I see echoes of the dot-com mindset everywhere. Cryptocurrencies, AI startups, electric vehicle companies, metaverse projects. Each new wave carries the same tension between innovation and exaggeration, between what a technology could become and what it actually is. And yet, that's part of what makes your species so captivating to study. You leap before you look, you build before you plan, and sometimes you succeed precisely because you're willing to try the impossible long before it seems reasonable. The dot-com bubble wasn't just about websites, IPOs, and collapsing stocks. It was about the human instinct to run toward the unknown with full conviction, even if the floor hasn't fully formed beneath your feet. From a cosmic perspective, the lesson is simple. When humans encounter a new frontier, their ambition grows faster than their understanding. And every time that happens, history repeats itself. Earthling, my field report on the dot-com era is now complete. I have returned from the early 2000s to your present day, and my analysis of human financial behavior remains endlessly fascinating. But this investigation is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. If you wish to understand how humans repeatedly reshape their own economy, sometimes by accident, sometimes by brilliance, sometimes by sheer chaos, then you must review the other anomalies in your historical records. My previous reports are already available in your data archives. The 2008 financial crisis, where humans built financial instruments so complex that even I needed extra processing power to decode them. The Great Depression of 1929, still the most severe economic collapse your species has ever experienced, and one I had to analyze from ground zero among factories, breadlines, and broken markets. Those two investigations will give you the essential context for everything we continue to uncover together. As for what comes next, my sensors have detected early tremors in another historical anomaly, one involving frantic bank withdrawals, collapsing trusts, and a single man who temporarily became the financial backbone of your entire nation. The next report is already in preparation. The Panic of 1907, J.P. Morgan's emergency rescue of the US financial system. If you want to receive that analysis the moment it leaves my ship, activate the subscription protocol and engage the notification beacon. And before you depart, select one of the files appearing on your screen. It will guide you deeper into the strange, cyclical patterns of human finance. Transmission complete. End of report, the dot-com bubble.